This is going to be a mildly sentimental topic for me, and it's because it took place during the time when I was learning about myself that my depression was becoming severe. I vividly remember being in school, in high school, and I finally got around to joining a club. I joined the science club. We had meetings on Thursdays, but I can't remember what the pattern was. I think it was every other Thursday, something like that. And it was great because it was my first time ever joining a club like that outside of my failed attempt at the Girl Scouts. And the teacher who ran the club was someone who I really looked up to a lot. I happened to have been able to recruit two people that I vividly remember from my normal squad in school. We had a great time. However, that came at a cost, and the cost was any of those days, those Thursdays that I had to be in those clubs, I had to be by myself after the meetings were over. It is illegal for someone like a teacher to give you a ride home or for you to hang out with teachers at all outside of school times, outside of school grounds, things like that. So I understood. I wasn't salty about that. But I remember that for one evening, it was mildly bitter cold outside because there was a little bit of wind. It was late winter, early spring. I wish I remembered. But I just remember that I was outside of the school building by myself. It was already like past 5 p.m. It was a cloudy day. Traffic was super light, of course. I was pretty much the only soul out there. The parking lot was barren, and all I remember was hearing like the trash bin being pushed by the custodian, by the janitor. I remember at the time I, of course, didn't have things like a smartphone to sort of help me get lost with myself. I just sat there and just looked around, and on top of that, I wanted to be aware of my surroundings and any noise, whatever. I would just, take a look, just know what's going on. And I just remember thinking that, man, this is a sacrifice that I have to make to partake in a club to make my profile look better if I start applying for colleges and things. But I also thought about, dang, this makes it kind of discouraging because I don't mind waiting, but I'm just worried about my well-being and safety out here. And on top of that, I was alone. I remember there were two instances when I was asked if everything was okay, if someone was coming to get me. And I was like, yeah, it's just that my mom works at this one job and her shift is not over until whatever time. But yeah, she's coming. And I was not mad at my mom at all. I mean, she had to do what she had to do. She had to work and everything. And I was grateful that I was even allowed to be in that club from the start, because she could have said no. She could have been like, I would love for you to take part, but you can't, you shouldn't, because what if nobody can take you? What about your transportation? This and that. And the reason some of my buddies in school could not drive me home was because some of them either walked to their homes, or some of them were able to catch a ride with other people. And those other people were folks who I wasn't entirely trusting of. I pretty much did not trust anyone under the age of like 30 to be driving a car. It was just my personal policy. It's just the way I was at the time. And I'm grateful because some folks did not come out of the streets unscathed all the time. And some folks never made it at all out of a vehicular incident. And not to talk trash, but I had that weird feeling in my gut that told me, hey, even though these people are offering and I need the help, it's just not wise. It doesn't feel right. They are people I don't know. And you guys know my opinion on some preventable tragedies. If this is a squad who I don't know and they don't know me, and I'm in this vulnerable situation, and I'm also, say, underage, and there is no family to look after me, why on God's green earth would I make a move that may result in my safety being compromised? That was my mentality back in the day. I thought to myself, I think being out here is much safer than getting in a vehicle that someone I don't know has control over. Who knows? Because when somebody else is running the show, they can decide to go somewhere else that you don't approve of, and I have to wait for them. And what about mom? She wouldn't be thrilled to know that she was expecting to find me either on school grounds or find me at home, and I am not at home. That type of thing. So to avoid disaster or any potential for disaster, I opted for not getting involved at all. And I remember that there was another club that I became a part of. It was something about teen development program. Basically what it was is coming up with topics that enrich you. And one of the topics I vividly remember was about teen pregnancy. And I said, there is no way I am going to ruin my life with something like that, neither as a teen nor as an adult. Just so you get an idea of what this club went over. I really wish I remembered what it stood for. Maybe it was called something like Team Outreach Program. But basically, it was trying to recruit teenagers to be at these seminars to conduct themselves more responsibly and discourage you from bad actions and encourage you with good actions, such as, oh, I encourage you to stay in school, commit to it, and graduate, and this, that, and the other. But I give you all this introduction so that you get an idea of the stuff that I had to endure as a teen and stuff that made it just naturally discouraging for me to be involved in certain things. And now I just wanted to also discuss what it was like to come home during those times, because my brother moved out when he completed school, of course, after his high school graduation, and he is 5 years older than me. Therefore, by the time he graduated, I missed him in high school. It's not like, oh, I got to be a freshman when my brother was a senior. No, when I completed middle school, he was done with high school, and I started high school the year after he graduated, the semester after he graduated. So it's not like I got to experience a family member mutually in school along with me. Of course, after that, for my adolescent years, it really sucked that I had to ride the bus and come home to an empty home. And don't misunderstand me, I had no problem riding the bus. The only time the bus sucked was in my 6th grade year, and it was because of some bullies that were there and some stupid girls that kept messing with me, messing with my hair on the basis of appearance and being actually smart in school and taking it seriously, being well behaved. Some people just couldn't stand that, and these were the kinds of girls who they get pregnant underage, they don't have parents. One of them, I found out years after that her mom had been dead the whole time I knew her, and that they're always traveling in packs and they're trying to beat people up. And they tried to come at me, but because I have a lot of this, I was like, I'm not going anywhere with you fools. So stop knocking at my door. I'm not going anywhere with you, because why are you coming over to my place with like rolled up magazines or whatever that was? And they just had objects in their hands. And why on God's green earth would I go somewhere with someone who has bullied me and I don't trust? That's just begging for trouble. So fortunately, I dodged that bullet, and I happened to be antisocial anyway. And I also had homework to do, which they had homework to do, and I know it because I had some of their classes and I know what school is like, and some of them were upperclassmen, so you have more homework than I do. But here you are, being a stupid clown. Coming home to an empty home, at the time I didn't realize how much of a negative thing that was. I just did not feel its consequences. Except for the summertime, because the summers I spent them all amongst four walls, and it drove me crazy because I wish I had somewhere to go, something to do. I wish I could work out. I wish I would have done something, anything at all. But this is something that is going to offend a lot of adults, because the 2 times in my life I have attempted to have this discussion with adults who fall into this category, it has been the most god-awful time in my life. But if someone, just one of you out there, understands what I'm saying, not love it, not accept it, not entertain me, but you see where I'm coming from, I'm satisfied. Basically, it's got to do with the person who is a full-time worker, but you are a full-time worker whose life, soul, and body is fucking drained by your job. Unfortunately, that was my mother, and I'm not mad at her at all for that, because she was doing that to be a mother who was responsible with her obligations, her responsibilities, her duties, financial, rent, looking after me with whatever my needs are physically, such as eating, clothing, school supplies, all of that stuff. And she did amazing for a single parent with a growing kid, especially heading into adolescence when resources are needed more. But it sucked that she was all that I had going on for me in my life back then, because all I had to come home to was a full-time worker who was tired, mentally drained, going through their shit, coming home to rant and ramble about it. Of course, she would ask me about school, how school is going, how I'm doing. I happen to be highly efficient, highly independent as a fucking student, excelling, never needing parental intervention. But I find that because I was a kid, and to this day I'm still an adult who doesn't bring problems to the house, when someone else brings problems to the house, I guess I take the role of someone who brings comfort, someone who gives support, who becomes a manager of that stuff. And I hate that, because when I observe these people I'm thinking about in the daytime, you're out here in the daytime, the start of your day, you got energy, you're better rested, you haven't experienced the hits of the battlefield that is daytime for a working adult. You haven't been drained, you haven't been attacked by work, your energy being consumed, you having to tend to other people's needs within your role, whatever. But when you come home, I have needs and desires, but I am neglected because I have to understand that you're the full-time worker who gave their energy to someone else, somewhere else. Your attention, one of your most powerful tools, went elsewhere. And then I get to experience the worst version of you. And if I express this, if I describe this, if I call you out on it, you can't handle it. You're offended because all you can think about is, I do this so that I can get my bills paid, so that I can eat, so that I can have clothes, which is great. But understand, the cost is my emotional neglect. But you describe that as me being selfish or self-absorbed, when all I'm begging for is your love, attention, and affection. Why is that difficult to understand? And that was primarily the sources of my fights with adults in my life. And I think that I was raised and bred and polished to be a kid who never brought problems home, because that way it's like I can give them a break. I don't cause issues. So whatever issues begin to exist in their lives, my life is simple enough to where I should be able to withstand whatever shittiness they bring home. And I think that's fucked up, and that's why I'm always bitter and salty. I always have to understand where they come from, their sacrifices, but they don't understand that their sacrifices have consequences on me ultimately. And I'm trying to explain it to you, express it to you, whether it be kindly or in a heat of a moment or something like that, and you still refuse to A, stay for the rest of the conversation so that you can actually grasp the whole picture. B, get offended by it, and C, it doesn't get resolved. And I just wish to understand what it would take for a modern adult, or really any adult in general, because I don't think this is just limited to the current generation. But all I know is that the homes of divorced people and homes that don't have like a truly mature individual residing in them, someone who has their shit together, organized, respects schedules, doesn't push things until the last fucking minute, all that. I understand now why people like me end up needing therapy the most. Like the overachieving student, the overachieving workers, and all that. It's like you do all this shit only to see the sources who you need, your resources, not prioritizing you, and they have like an erroneous picture of what's going on with you in life, and they just refuse to listen. No matter how much you think you're present at home, you're probably not as present as you think you are. You probably don't know the people in your home as well as you think you do. That shit is concerning. That shit is wrong. If you don't have energy for your home, for your people, nor the patience, nor the love, nor the dedication, there is something wrong. So don't be offended if that individual who is at home calls you out on it. Just be like, you know what? Thanks for making me aware. What do you need? How can I make it better? And by extension, I can be like, hey, these are my needs. However, I understand that you too have needs, wants, and desires. How about if we compromise to this level of something, and you can compromise to your level of something, but no matter what, we are structured in this way, and we respect this, and we don't steer away from this. That's how you give someone their place, and that's how you avoid conflicts and issues. But all I see is people being too fixated on themselves, and then of course, when someone finally begins to express themselves about themselves, like you start fixating on yourself in the presence of this person who fixates on themselves. For some reason, they can't handle that, and they start labeling you as self-absorbed and selfish. No! You actually don't hear me out as much as you think you do. And that's why we have issues. I thought that I would share that because I am not ever going to stop talking about this shit until I see improvement, until I see changes. We need to get to a point when all of us adults can hear things, be told things, and you can handle it maturely, as opposed to being fucking easily offended, and you get upset and you walk the fuck out and you don't resolve the issues. You probably don't even understand where the issue comes from. And I could point out something like, oh, why are you taking such a defensive stance? Who or what is doing this to you to where that is your default reaction when it shouldn't be? So with my mom, I can say that that's something that got fixed pretty much for the most part. And the reason I say for the most part is because we did have our differences a few months back. And as you guys remember, it revolved around her accident and how suddenly she needed more of me. But then I felt like because the demands were increasing, like I wasn't enough. And there's nothing that makes me more frustrated than me knowing that I'm legit doing everything I can and that everything else is not up to me. It's up to other individuals that you have to do your work and reach out to. But still, I feel the pressure on me because this person only knows how to decompress on me because I'm literally the person who's there, present, and all they have. And I'm thinking, I don't do that shit to you. When I have problems, I have the problem, I go through it, I resolve it, and you don't find out about it until I have the whole story to tell you and it's over. But I understand that it's not practical for everybody to be like that, especially if you need intervention or assistance during the matter. But unless I run into an issue that I just cannot surpass on my own, you ain't never gonna find out about it until the story is over, and that way I can tell you the whole story in one sitting. Why can you not do the same? I think that's the proper adult way of doing things. I think this is all about differences in attitudes and coping, of course. I can say that I handle this way better than I used to, and that's one of the things that makes me most proud, because I imagine that most of you have met me through my Living Without a Family video or my World Without Men video, and one of the things that I can recall at that time that I had to work on was my pushover tendencies. And now it's like I am so emotionally able to deal with this and let go, that all I want is to continue to get better from here and recognize a clown when I see one and dismiss them. My mistake still to this day is that as much as I talk about how I can dismiss clowns in customer service, when it comes to outside of that, I have a tendency of entertaining when someone becomes a clown outside of work. And I just gotta resist the urge of engaging with them with that situation. I need to learn to let them have their little meltdown and be like, we can revisit this at another time, as opposed to trying to reason with them and explain to them how and why they are wrong about their thought and about me and the intent that I had. Only I know what my intent was. I'm not the kind of bitch who be creating drama for the sake of getting into arguments. I hate arguments because A, I tend to win them often, and B, they tend to escalate unnecessarily, and I get nothing out of that except pain, because I don't like to fight with people I know I'm not supposed to be fighting with. I'm not like that, and that's why I had pushover tendencies, because all I could think about is how to mitigate the conflict. And it just really sucks that to this day that is still bullshit that haunts me. And as much as I hear some people say that there's some stuff that I can't control or I won't be able to control, you have more control over shit than you think. And this is one of those situations that I know where my power lies. I know what kind of control I have. But unfortunately, the other person has to be willing to understand why this is an issue that takes place in the first place, and look inward and realize that not everything is as it seems. Not everything is this conspiracy against you or whatever the fuck. Like, the way that other people react is not going to be indicative of how I'm reacting to something. That's them. That's what lets me know that you don't know me as well as you think. And that is the most disappointing part, I have to say. But anyways, you guys, I'm just putting this out there just to let you know what some of the struggles I observe in my life are and how I cope with it. To also have a record for myself that the way that I handle it now is so much better than the past, and I'm just grateful that I was able to conquer this. I remember when this shit used to reduce me to tears, and I was shaken up the last time this happened to me. Like, physically, I could feel myself trembling, but at least I can recover from that fast. I was still able to smile about something. I was still able to be engaged with the things I'm learning about. I still had the energy to go buy whatever I need to eat, take care of my cat's needs, clean whatever I have to clean after myself, and of course do some work and whatnot. Yeah, this shit doesn't faze me at all. Whereas in the past, I used to keep this with me and it used to define me. I'm like, oh my God, I had this issue and now I'm going to be lost in myself. I'm just so sick and tired of people like this making everything a threat. Like, it's just literally never a fun time. And my favorite thing about conflicts is the rupture and the repair. But unfortunately, with some people, I just linger in a continuous state of rupture, and the repair never comes because they walk the fuck away and they can't handle it. They need to get to the point when you can handle it. In the same manner I can handle you when you have your shit going on, handle me when I have my shit going on. Is that too hard to understand? Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.